Before their partnership began, both Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy had enjoyed a successful solo career in silent films. However, after the mid-1920s, they formed their double act and made films together for 25 years, becoming a formidable combination. The fat, conceited, and thin stupid ones were actually two very shrewd, talented, and vastly experienced performers. The tragic ending of Laurel and Hardy. What really happened to Laurel and Hardy? Laurel and Hardy are the best comedy duo the world has ever known. Prior to their partnership, both performed in silent films. Laurel and Hardy collaborated on more than 100 films between 1926 and 1951, starting with short two-reels before moving on to feature-length productions like 1933's Sons of the Desert and Way. Comedy's charisma and informal style transcend all political and linguistic barriers, speaking the same language to people everywhere. Even now, more than 50 years later, they are still instantly recognizable, and their punchlines are fondly remembered. I'm Mr. Hardy, and this is my friend, Mr. Laurel. Well, here's another nice mess you've gotten me into. Out West, in 1937. Their most acclaimed period was prior to 1940, when they were with the Roach Studio. After that, they had less artistic license, and their films became more formulaic and less spontaneous. A relationship between geniuses that will never be forgotten. When asked about the factors that contributed to Laurel and Hardy's success, Oliver Hardy simply responded, "Ask Stan Lau." Born Arthur Stanley Jefferson on June 16, 1890, in Oberon, Cumbria, in northern England, Stan Lau had two brothers and a sister, and came from a theatrical family. Both of his parents were well-known stage actors for a large portion of his childhood. Before moving to Glasgow with his family, where his father had taken over as manager of the Metropole Theatre at an early age, Stanley lived with his grandmother in County Durham, where he also went to school. Stanley showed an interest in the stage, and his early ambition was to be a music hall comedian. From the age of 15, he used to play truant from school in order to watch and study the comics at the Britannia Pant Opticon Theatre in Glasgow, and he made his debut there when he was just 16 years old by 1910. He was good enough to be invited to join Fred Carnell's traveling comedy troupe, where he was both a featured performer and understudy to its main star. 1. Charles Chaplin. He traveled with the Carnell troupe to America in 1910, returning to Britain to resume touring. In 1913, he returned with the Carnell troupe, and this time he stayed touring for several years in Vale. He also appeared with the actress May Coubert, with whom he lived for 6 years from 1919, although never marrying, when Stan began getting the occasional walk-on role in the fast-developing new medium of motion pictures, and decided that the 13 letters in his stage name of Stan Jefferson was unlucky. It was May who suggested the surname of Laurel, and from 1919 he was always billed as Stan Laurel. He made several short movies between 1917 and 1924, while still touring the Vale circuit, including in 1921 making The Lucky Dog with a certain Oliver Hardy. Although nothing came of it at the time in 1924, Stan gave up the stage completely in order to concentrate on movies, and he was given a contract by stuntman turned producer. After Joe Rock's contract with Rock ended, he continued to develop his comedic abilities by making 12 comedy shorts. He was hired by producer Hal Roach, primarily as a writer and director, only occasionally performing as a performer when necessary. He directed Yes, Yes, Nanette, starring Oliver Hardy, in 1925, and wrote and directed for numerous other films in 1925 and 1926. In total, before his collaboration with Hardy, he had appeared in over 60 films. In 1926, Stan established himself as a regular and significant member of the group known as the Hal Roach Hal. Roach gave all-star and more acting parts, and it became clear over time that whenever he and Oliver were in the same scene, a unique humorous spark was kindled. Initially, there wasn't much of an attempt to make them work together, but as they starred in more movies, their collaboration became unavoidable. They produced a series of short, outstanding comedic films together, starting with Put in Pants on Philip in 1927. Laurel Hardy, the youngest of 5 children, was born in Harlem, Georgia, on January 18, 1892. His mother, Emily, became the breadwinner and worked as a whole-town manager, first in Madison and then in Midville, Georgia. Although Norville showed little interest in schoolwork, he participated enthusiastically in school activities. He was a gifted singer who began performing with local minstrel shows at the age of 8. In 1910, at the age of 18, he took on the role of manager of a movie theater that had opened in Melville. He became a fervent supporter of the rapidly expanding new medium of movies and chose to pursue a career in film acting. At this point, he began using his first name, Oliver, in remembrance of his father, and from 1910 on, he always styled himself Oliver Norville Hardy. Went to Jacksonville, Florida in 1913, where he worked as a cabaret and veil singer at night and found film work at the Lubin film business. Because of his 250-pound girth, he frequently played the comedic villain in comedic shorts from the beginning. Oliver worked as a freelancer for several Hollywood film companies for 5 years starting in 1918. He partnered with Larry Sion, a well-known figure in film comedy at the time, and he played a Tin Man in Simmons' The Wizard of Oz in 1925. Oliver spent the next 10 years gaining experience making silent films for various companies. He also gained notoriety in the comedy series Plump and Runt. Comics like Bobby Ray, Jimmy Aubrey, and Billy West made an appearance in the film in 1921. Lucky Dog, featuring Stan Laurel, another up-and-coming comic who began his career in 1924 and was already well known for his work in silent films. Hardy joined Hal Roach Studios and collaborated with major acts like Charlie Chase and Our Gang. He starred in the comedy. He reconnected with the young British comedian Stan Laurel, who had also signed with Rope as a writer and director. Stan starred Oliver in the 1925 film Yes, Yes, Net. Stan was getting more and more attention on screen, and he and Oliver started sharing scenes in films like Slipping Wives and With Love and Hisses. In 1927, they weren't yet Laurel and Hardy, but their comic chemistry was clear. The future supervising director was Leo McCarey, the Academy Award-winning director, and he started consciously and progressively combining them. The personalities and interactions that have become so recognizable today were first developed by the comedians. The characters of Laurel and Hardy, who are now so well known, did not appear right away. Their first films together, which were released at 0840, were part of the regular production of the Roach organization. And even though the two men jilted flawlessly, they were not yet completely identifiable, as Laurel and Hardy's Slipping Wives in 1927, which features Priscilla Deans, one of the biggest stars of the 1920s, surpasses both Laurel and Hardy in this clever film that features a virtuoso performance by Stan Laurel, who steals the show. The same year, Duck Soup features a bowler-hated Stan and a top-hated Oliver, but its humor is frantic in comparison to the cleverer, better-paced offerings to come from the duo. Nevertheless, Leo McCarey, the supervising director of the Hal Roach studio, had seen enough of the two together on screen to know they had something special, so he put them together more and more until the magic of the partnership gradually started to work. During their time with Roach, they made over 70 films, including a number of short films, including The Battle of the Century in 1927, Should Married Men Go Home, and Two Tars in 1928, and When. Their best work was produced between 1930 and 1938, and includes such gems as County Hospital in 1932, The Devil's Brother, and Busy Bodies in 1933, Them Thar Hills in 1934, The Bohemian Girl in 1936, and others. Talkies arrived in 1929 and made a calm and astute transition with Unaccustomed as We Are. They were also among the first to realize that the fast-paced action of silent slapstick should be slowed down for the more mundane pacing of sound film comedy. The Academy Award for Best Live-Action Short Subject of 1932 was the first short to receive this honor, and it was the only Oscar the boys ever won. One of the highlights of their career as a double act was the Music Box winning. They continued to make shorts until 1935, but during this time, they also started making very popular feature-length comedies, starting with Pardon Us in 1931 and moving on to the classic Sons of the Desert in 1933 and Babes in Toyland in 1934, also known as March of the Wooden Soldiers, which has become a beloved Christmas classic. As Babes in Toyland was being made, the relationship between Stan and Hal Roach grew increasingly strained, following significant arguments over the film's plot. Stan and Oliver kept producing films for Roach until 1940, when they parted ways after finishing their last Roach movie, Chump at Oxford, and joined two major studios, 20th Century Fox and MGM, in the hopes of having more freedom to express their ideas on screen. However, the opposite occurred. They were treated like bovie actors and were not permitted to contribute to the scripts or improvise on set. Their final American film, Bullfighters 1945 and A Haunting We Will Go 1942, were both commercially successful and popular with the public, but they lacked the same style and quality as their Roach films. Apart from AOL, the team's work after 1945 was primarily focused on live theater and stage tours throughout Europe. They began with the Great ACC Claim in 1947 and 1948 at the music halls of Britain, followed by other successful tours of Ireland and mainland Europe in 1952 and 1953. Both Stan and Ali had been heavy smokers their entire lives and suffered from health issues that affected the latter stages of their careers. In December 1954, they made their only American television appearance, an impromptu and unrehearsed version of This Is Your Life. The show's popularity prompted new talks for the boys to appear in a series of American TV series called Laurel and Hardy's Fabulous Fables, but the plans were shelved due to the actors' deteriorating health. After suffering a small heart attack in 1954, Oliver suffered several strokes over the following few years, which left him paraplegic and unable to communicate. His wife nursed him during his final illness. On August 7, 1957, Lucille Oliver Hardy passed away. He was buried at Pierce Brothers Valhalla Memorial Park in North Hollywood, California, at the age of 65. At the time of Ali's passing, Stan was recuperating from a stroke that occurred, and he was too sick to attend his partner's funeral, saying that his partner would understand. Stan never appeared in public again after Ali's passing. Stan Laurel passed away on February 23, 1965, from a heart attack in his Santa Monica apartment. He was 75 years old. Farewell and rest in peace, legendary comic actors Laurel and Hardy, Laurel and Hardy.